Does anyone remember that TV series that aired in the mid to late 2000s called Lost? Well, if you do, then this series I want to be talking about today is somewhat reminiscent of that. And so let's just dive headfirst into Class 1-9. So I caught up because honestly, I was just like, wow, like I started reading it, and as soon as I started reading it, I was just like, I couldn't stop. I legit could not help myself. I literally caught up in just one sitting because of just how much I was enjoying reading the series. Now let's actually get into the synopsis, because if you know what Lost is, or if you don't, I'm still going to give an explanation, because there is obviously some core differences, but it does have that overall tone slash vibe. So basically, all of our characters within the story, get trapped on an island. And this island that we can see so far is abandoned. However, there is some mysterious things on the island. For one, there is a random cache of guns that they managed to actually find, which kind of indicates that this is obviously an island that is used. They go to a cave, and the cave is relatively clean and well kept, which basically implies that someone has obviously been using the cave. So there is multiple areas throughout the story so far to where it indicates that the island isn't necessarily abandoned. There is individuals that apparently come to this island every so often. It just, we don't know exactly why, but obviously it isn't probably for good reasons if there is, like, let's say, guns on the island. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So basically, our characters decide to go on a school trip. They wanted to, basically go to a school trip, and as they go to the school trip, they were going to go out in the ocean and have fun, etc. Just a fun time, a school activity, so to speak. And as this kind of happens, basically there was a dare that was made to one of the kids that says, like, hey, I bet you won't drive this and all that, because the driver, the designated driver of, like, the lifeboat or whatever that was going to drive them out into the ocean and have fun, he had to jump off real quick to grab something, his hat and all that. And as soon as he did, one of the kids dared this other kid, like, hey, could you actually drive this or whatever? And so the kid did. He started driving. He didn't realize how to kind of stop it because he started going forward. And as it kept going forward, he got too far out. And then eventually a storm arrived, and the tide and current and all that took them out to sea. And fast forward to the events, they managed to wake up on the island, and all the people that were on, this raft or whatever are on the island. However, one individual is dead. And obviously, most of the survivors that, managed to, land on the island, they're unaware of this. They don't know that this individual is dead, and it's like a secret that is kept throughout the chapters so far. But the point is that a lot of the individuals don't realize the gravity of the situation, that pretty much, like, food is scarce, water's scarce, and if they don't ration things, they're gonna die. It's the typical elements you would see in, like, a survival story or any type of environment, that obviously if you don't have food, you don't have shelter, and you're not able to properly align and, work together, there's gonna be a lot of death. And obviously this series is taking that route, because there's already kind of setup and story beats that's going down that direction to where a lot of characters are definitely going to die. But anyways, pretty much in terms of the start, when they actually land on the island, all of our characters, they don't really have a good unity, because we get to see very early on, there's a few kids that are not necessarily being treated right. For instance, there's this one kid that is obviously being bullied, he's an outcast, and there's individuals that try to help him, but overall, he's a straight-up outcast that's continuously being bullied in school, and he's the kid that managed to actually find all the guns. And when he found the guns, the gun accidentally fired, he hurt the teacher that was with them, and then he was forced to be tied up. And that is the current situation of the story, at least as far as I've read. And obviously, with the way this is all building up, that kid's gonna snap. It's only a matter of time until that kid snaps because of just, being constantly bullied and now tied up on an island, no food, no water. You can only do so much to an individual until they finally break and they need to just do something for survival's sake alone, which that's the next thing to get into. So, the beginning of the story, like the first chapter of Class 1-9, it showcases our main female lead and kind of the aftermath. It implies that she was able to get off the island somehow. It's very vague, we don't know necessarily how, but all the events that's taking place throughout the story is her writing them down on a sheet of paper and then handing them to this doctor that we don't really know who he is, etc. But she's writing all the events down. And so the story's technically taking place in the past, and the current present is actually just her writing everything down. So we don't know who's necessarily dead or not. The only thing we really do know at this given time is that the main female character did get off the island, and she does imply that at the very least she didn't see everyone on the island die. So it's vague enough to know that she isn't the only survivor, but it's also vague enough to make us assume that she just could be unaware that everybody is dead. So we don't really know. That is a big thing that happens at the beginning of the chapter, to leave things mysterious and vague, and I think that's a very good way to kind of start off a story, because even though we know the main female character is going to be able to get off the island somehow, we don't necessarily know if she's fully safe or not, because here's the thing, this is kind of like the elephant in the room, so to speak, when it comes to just the entire event of the story, is that obviously with the guns on the island, someone was delivering guns to that island, and because of the location within the world of, the story, the characters imply that they're probably in North Korean territory, and obviously that's... yeah, I'm not going to get too deep into that subject, but the point is that it's not safe. And so, for all we know, the main female character could be, in some form of facility in a different country, and they're about to imprison her or whatever, and they're just kind of interrogating her at that moment. We don't really know. So there is a lot going on within the story that is legitimately fascinating, and I feel like the writing beats of it is able to use these common cliches and tropes in such a unique way that keeps it very engaging, because that is something to talk about. I've said it in the past, and I'll say it again. Just because something seems generic or it follows a similar story beats, it's kind of like a isekai, doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. It just depends on the writer, the actual talent of the writer, if they're able to, present a story that we've kind of seen every so often. And I feel like the way this story is presented, it's fresh, but also familiar enough to be able to kind of seek out more and want to see where the story is going to go. So far, I've enjoyed it, and I think that legitimately, in terms of the art style as well, it's actually unique. I really do like the art style of Class 1-9. It reminds me a lot of the style of, let's say, Sweet Home, if anyone's actually, read Sweet Home, or let's say Shotgun Boy. The very tone and vibe and the color palette, so the background art and all that, it gives me off that sinister vibe. Now, one thing I do want to clarify, we don't know if there is supernatural or anything in this story yet. For instance, for all we know, there could be elements of monsters, creatures, whatever on this island. We just don't know because it hasn't been fully explored yet. But at this time, it seems to be grounded in realism, and it's mainly just, the students slowly turning on each other for their own survival. I wonder if there will eventually, let's say, be cannibalism in this story. I mean, it's potentially possible. I mean, once food starts getting scarce, that definitely could theoretically happen. But, yeah, that's pretty much so far with where the story is going. Now, besides all of that, I do want to say, if you are interested in reading Class 1-9, I do highly recommend you checking it out. Its link is in the description. It's free to read. You do not have to worry. You don't have to pay or anything like that. Just click on the link, and it'll help me out, and you'll be able to read it. It's completely free. On top of that as well, I just want to say that I do actually recommend this story. It is fun. It is actually a fun read so far. You guys are always giving me really good recommendations in terms of webtoons or manga or whatever, and so I want to do the exact same. Once again, I want to kind of share some of the things I find with all of you, because I know there's always, individuals out there that are seeking something new to read, because there's just a lot of good stories out there that kind of fly under the radar, and I feel like Class 1-9 might be one of those series that could potentially fly under the radar, or maybe even get very popular. Who really knows? But I want to leave the video at that. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy my content and you enjoyed this video, do leave me a like. It does help me out a lot. And with that, Chibi out.